You do not wake to cold stone and clean banners. You wake to a wall that breathes, smoke soaked into the wool above your face, old fat gone sour in the rushes below your feet, the slow, wet rot of a building that never fully dries. Stone holds cold and stone holds smell, and a castle holds both for centuries. Before your eyes open, the air has already told you everything. The fire is dying. Someone emptied a pot too close to the hall. The man who slept beside you has not washed since the last frost. This is the part the paintings leave out. A castle was not a monument. It was a body, and bodies smell. You do not sleep in a room. If you are low, you sleep on the floor of the great hall. 40 bodies breathing the same thick air. Dogs among them, and the dogs are cleaner than the men. There is no undressing worth the name. You sleep in what you wore, and you wore it yesterday, and you will wear it tomorrow. And the wool has never once been washed since it was cut. Under you are the rushes. People think of clean straw. It was not clean straw. It was cut grass and reeds thrown down on the stone months ago, and no one lifts the whole of it. They scatter a little fresh green over the top and leave the rest. Under that top layer, the floor is a black mat, packed hard with spilled ale, dropped meat, bones, grease, spit, the fat of dogs, and the mess of anyone too drunk or too sick to reach the yard in the dark. You wake with your cheek pressed into that. You wake already smelling of it, and you no longer know that you do. The rich do not sleep here. Up a stair worn smooth by centuries of feet, the Lord has a chamber with a door that closes, and behind that door the air is a different air. Not clean, cleaner. Someone has burned juniper and dried lavender in a dish through the night. Someone has laid fresh herbs between the bed linen, meadowsweet and rose petals crushed to cover what the body does while it sleeps. Wealth in a castle was never the absence of the smell. It was the money to stand one wall away from it. You rise, and the cold takes you first, and then the smoke finds you. In the older halls there is no chimney worth the name, only a hole in the roof that the wind ignores. So the smoke gathers in a flat gray ceiling at the height of a standing man and hangs there. It gets into the wool, the hair, the beard, the bread, the lungs. It sinks into everything soft and stays. The walls above the fire are black and shining, glazed with the grease of 1,000 meals, and no one has ever thought to clean them, because there is no clean, there is only less. You cough. Everyone coughs. A wet, deep, winter cough that never fully clears, and no one calls it sickness, because sickness is the water that kills you in a day, not the smoke that kills you across 40 years. You will smell of wood smoke until you die, and you will not notice, because every mouth near you carries the same smell back to you. You do not really wash. There is a bowl if you are lucky, water hauled cold and heavy from the well, and you wet your hands and drag them over your face, and that is the morning done. Your teeth you rub with a rag and a little ash, and a twig frayed at the end, if you care at all, and most do not. Breath in a castle is a thing you learn to breathe through your own mouth to survive. Onion, ale, rotten stumps of teeth, the sour of a stomach that went to sleep empty. All of it close, all of it shared. Because privacy is a thing the rich buy, and you were not born rich. The well itself is not safe. It sits in the courtyard, and into that same courtyard drains the rain that ran across the stable, the yard, the midden, the runoff of everything the castle produces. In a dry siege summer, the well turned foul, and men drank it anyway and died of it, quietly, blaming the air. This is why no one drinks water when they can help it. Ale in the morning, ale at noon, ale for the children, weak and sour but boiled somewhere in its making, and the boiling is the only reason half the castle sees the winter out. Long before the Lord stirs, the castle is already at work in the dark. Someone has been up since the 4th hour hauling wood, someone else carrying water up the stairs on a yoke that has bent his shoulders since he was a boy. The kitchen fire never fully died in the night, and now it is fed back into a roar. Out in the yard, the midden grows, the great heap where everything the castle cannot eat or use is thrown. Ash and bone and peelings and dung and the guts of yesterday's meat steaming faintly in the cold air. The smell of the midden is the smell of the whole place pressed into one corner. You learn which way the wind comes, and you learn to stand upwind of it. And that small knowledge is most of what survival means in here. Now the part every film forgets. A castle is a machine for making waste, and it has to put that waste somewhere. The answer is the garderobe, a cold stone seat set into the thick of the wall, over a shaft that drops straight down through the masonry. You sit in a slot in the wall with the wind coming up the shaft at you, carrying the smell of everyone who sat there before you, and it all falls away into a pit at the base of the tower, or straight out into the moat. The moat. You have seen it painted, a bright ribbon of water with swans on it. Forget the swans. The moat of a real castle was very often the sewer. The garderobe shafts emptied into it. The kitchen slops went into it. Dead things ended in it. In high summer, it did not sparkle. It sat, thick and green and unmoving, breathing a smell up the walls that everyone inside had long ago agreed to stop mentioning. The castle sat in its own filth, like a body in a bath it never drained. There was a man whose whole trade was that pit. They called him the gong farmer, and he worked at night because no one else could stand to be near the work by day, and he was paid more than a soldier because the price of the job was your lungs and sometimes your life. Men went down into those pits to dig out what the castle had made, and the air at the bottom, still and thick and years deep, killed some of them where they stood, folding them quietly into the dark they had come to empty. Wealth is very good at hiding the men who carry its waste away. It has always needed them, and it has never wanted to see them. If you want me to keep opening the doors the history books were too polite to show you, follow this channel now, because we are nowhere near the bottom of this one yet. Even getting a thing clean here means adding one more smell to bury the last. The washing is done in wooden tubs with lye boiled out of wood ash, and stale urine saved in a jar over days for the purpose, because the sharpness in it lifts old grease from wool better than plain water ever could. So the cleanest shirt in the castle was scrubbed in ash and piss and cold river water, then dried stiff over a smoking fire, and it came back gray and hard and smelling faintly of all three. Clean was never a thing you could smell here. Clean was only the absence of the very worst of it, and only for an afternoon, until the body went back to work and made the smell again. And if you think the low places are the worst of it, wait. You have not yet stood in the kitchen. You have not yet leaned over the feast. Stay in this body a little longer, because the dirtiest air in the whole castle was not in the pit under the tower. It was in the room where the wealth put itself on show. If this is turning your stomach, that means it is working. So stay, and when you understand why, tell me in the comments whether you would have lasted a single morning here. The kitchen is its own separate fear. Fire everywhere, open flame under black iron pots, whole beasts turning on spits, fat dripping and flaring and hanging a haze of burnt grease in the air that never once lifts. It is loud and wet and hot enough to blister a boy's face as he turns the handle hour after hour. They butcher here. They pluck here. Blood on the stone, guts in a bucket, feathers stuck to everything in the steam. A boy in the corner gutting fish, flies over all of it. Always flies, because there is no cold store, and meat is hung until it turns, and then cooked hard and fast to hide what it has become. You would smell the roasting meat and think of plenty. Lean closer. Under the roast is the reek of the guts they pulled this morning. The old blood soaked deep into the wood of the block. The fish going off in the corner heat. The tallow. The sweat of men who have stood beside fire for 16 hours. This is the back room of the beautiful food. Beauty in a castle always had a back room, and the back room stank. There was one place in the whole castle that fought the air on purpose. The chapel. Here they burned incense. Frankincense if the Lord was rich and pious enough to buy it, and the sweet blue smoke of it was meant to carry the prayers upward. But everyone who ever knelt on that cold floor knew its second purpose: to push back for one held breath the smell of the bodies crushed in close around them. Even the way these people reached for heaven was shaped by the stink of the earth they knelt on. The holiest air in the castle was only the most expensive mask. By mid-morning, the horns come back across the fields, and the Lord returns from the hunt with the smell of it worn on him like a crown. Horse sweat and crushed grass and the hot copper of fresh blood, a stag or a boar slung dripping across the pack. The dogs pour in wild and wet and stinking, and the whole yard fills with the noise and the reek of the kill being opened and dressed. The Lord loves it. This smell, blood and horse and open air, is the one smell in his entire world that means power instead of poverty, and he can wash it off whenever he chooses. That is the difference. That was always the only difference. Up in the hall the Lord eats, and the eating is a performance. A swan brought back to the table dressed in its own skin and feathers, a peacock sewn back into its plumage, a boar's head, sugar spun into the shape of a castle, spiced wine poured hot. It looks like wealth, and it smells of heavy spice, and the spice is not only there for pleasure. Pepper, clove, cinnamon, ginger, poured on without limit, partly to flaunt the money it took to buy them, partly to bury the taste of meat that is a day or a week past safe. The richer the man, the more spice on his plate, because the more spice, the more he could hide, and everyone at that table knew it, and no one said it. At the bottom of the same castle they eat pottage, a gray stew of grain and whatever green thing grows near the walls. The same pot fed and fed again for days, sometimes weeks, thickening at the bottom into something older than the week itself. Bread hard enough to crack a tooth, meant to be soaked, meant to last. Ale instead of water. Hunger sat at the foot of the castle, and richness sat at its head. And between the two rose one shared column of smoke and grease and rot, and both ends of the castle breathed it in equally. And here is the thing the Lord's fine clothes will never admit: he is not clean underneath them. The heavy furs and the trimmed velvet and the layered wool are warm, and they are proof of money, and they are also a whole country for the lice and the fleas that no amount of gold could ever evict. The rich man scratched exactly as the poor man scratched. Fine ladies kept small dogs in their laps partly so the fleas would climb onto the dog instead. Combs of carved ivory pulled the same knits from noble hair as the cheap bone comb pulled from everyone else. The vermin of a castle were the one court that never once bowed. They fed on the Lord and on the stable boy with the same appetite, and in that at least the place was honest. If the smell of this place has reached you by now, leave a like and drag a few more people down into this hall with you. A castle was never only people. It was a farm you could not leave. Dogs slept in the hall and fouled it. Hawks sat in the mews. Horses stood in the stable close enough to smell across the whole yard, and the stable was mucked when someone got to it, and not before. Pigs and chickens moved through the bailey, and the bailey floor was mud and dung and rotting straw churned together by hooves and boots into a paste that never dried, summer or winter. You walked in it, you slept above it, you ate an arm's length from it. And in the walls, always, in every wall, the rats, moving in the dark, breeding in the dark, dying in the dark, and rotting where they died, until the smell told someone which stone to lift. Move through the castle itself, and the smell moves with you, changing floor by floor. The spiral stairs are tight and lightless, the stones sweating cold damp under your hand, and the torches jammed into the wall brackets burn pitch and tallow that leave a greasy black smoke smeared across the ceiling above each one. Pass a doorway and the kitchen reaches out and grabs you. Pass another and it is the sour breath of the sleeping hall. Then the sharp ammonia sting of a garderobe shaft buried in the wall. Then, near the Lord's rooms, that thin, failing thread of lavender and juniper trying to hold a line against all the rest of it. You could find your way through a castle blind, by the nose alone, and every single step would tell you exactly how close you stood to power. The smell changed with the year, but it never once left. In deep winter, the cold pressed it down and thickened it. Everyone shut inside around the smoke, with the animals drawn in closer for the warmth, the air heavy and still and human. In high summer, the cold could no longer hold anything back. The moat woke and breathed, the midden ripened, the meat turned faster than they could cook it, and the flies owned the hall from the first light. There was no season that smelled of nothing. There was only which kind of bad the weather chose to give you. In a shuttered corner room, a woman is giving birth, and there is nothing clean about it. The shutters are closed tight against the bad air they fear, so the room is hot and dark and close, thick with blood and sweat and tallow smoke, and the herbs the wise woman burns to help. Far more women died in those sealed rooms than any sword ever took, of the fever that crept in after, and no one on earth understood why, only that the birthing room and the sick room and the deathbed all came to smell the same in the end, of the body giving way. Life and death in a castle were never kept apart. They happened in the next room, behind the same damp wall, often on the same day. Sickness moved through this air as though it owned the place, because it did. Damp lived in the walls, and from the walls it moved into the chest. Everyone carried a cough. Fevers came with the bad weather and took the weak away with them. The very old and the very young first, quietly, in the night, in the same room where everyone else kept breathing. Wounds went bad from nothing. A splinter, a scratch, a bad tooth, and the castle had no answer for it, but prayer and a wise woman's herbs and a great deal of luck. And when the true plague came, it did not knock at the gate and wait to be let in. The walls that kept out an army kept in the sickness. A castle sealed against a bad year became a closed box of shared breath and rising fear, and the thick stone that meant safety became the lid on a pot. Rank bought you a scented cloth to hold over your face. Rank did not buy you clean air. Even terror is ranked in a place like this, but death is not. The Lord in his herb-strewn chamber, and the boy on the black rushes below him, breathed the very same ending, and the stone did not care which of them it took first. The light goes, and the castle turns inward on itself. Candles of clean beeswax for the high table, and for everyone else tallow, which is rendered animal fat, so that even the light in a castle smells faintly of old meat as it burns and smokes. The fire is banked down for the night. Doors are barred, not against the cold, but against the dark, and whatever moves in it, man or beast or worse. The last sounds are dogs shifting in the rushes, a horse somewhere below, wind finding the arrow slits, and the endless small movement of rats in the walls. You lie down where you woke, on the same rushes, in the same unmoved air, a whole day of smoke and grease and dung and breath, now soaked so far into your skin and your wool that you will carry it into your sleep and out the other side into tomorrow. You do not think about it. You cannot afford to think about it, because a man cannot survive noticing every hour what he has no power to change. So you close your eyes in the breathing dark, and the wall breathes with you, and the castle holds its long-held breath around you, and you sleep. If you made it this far without turning away, subscribe, because there are 100 more rooms like this one waiting, and every last one of them still smells. This is the thing the stone remembers, and the paintings will never tell you. Strip away the banners and the swords and the songs, and a castle was a warm, crowded, stinking animal of a building, holding the breath of everyone who ever lived and died and rotted inside it. The wealth was real, the filth was real. They were never once in different rooms. They were only ever a single wall apart, breathing the same smoke, the same damp, the same slow rot, from the lord in his linen to the boy on the floor. And when the last of them was gone, and the names were forgotten, and the roof fell in, and the tourists came with their cameras to admire the clean gray stone, the one thing the castle never gave back, the one thing it kept for itself, was the smell of everything it had ever held. You have walked through a castle now, not the one on the postcard, but the one that was really there. And the next time you stand in one of those cold, clean ruins and breathe in nothing but old stone and rain, remember that the silence and the emptiness are the only lies the building still tells. It was never empty, it was never quiet, and it never ever smelled of nothing.